Spectrum Mobile brings you our best deal to start the new year. Now you can get unlimited mobile for $15 per line when you get 2 lines. Spectrum Mobile includes nationwide 5G and the fastest wireless speeds with unlimited talk, text, and data. Switch to Spectrum Mobile Unlimited for just $15 per line for 12 months when you get 2 lines with no added taxes or hidden fees and no contracts. Start saving on your mobile bill now. Go to SpectrumMobile.com or visit a Spectrum store near you. Offer subject to change. Valid for new and qualified customers. Service not available in all areas. Per line activation fee, Spectrum Internet, and auto pay required. Restrictions apply.
If you travel, you know how to pull off a perfect getaway. You know after you enroll with your Delta SkyMiles Platinum American Express card, you get up to $10 back monthly on U.S. rideshare purchases with select providers, like a car to the airport. You know which remote retreats have the best herbal baths, and where the Wi-Fi password is rarely used. Because you're the escape artist. It's why you're a Delta SkyMiles Platinum American Express card member. If you travel, you know. Terms apply. Purchases must be on card. Visit go.amex/you-know.
This Black History Month, tap into Prime Video. Follow up on Swarm that had Black Twitter buzzing last year. Donald Glover is back with the new series Mr. and Mrs. Smith, co-created by Francesca Sloan. You know what's also new? Snoop Dogg stars in a comeback kid comedy, The Underdogs, with Tika Sumpter and Mike Epps. And while you're at it, go ahead and add your favorite channels like Stars and BET Plus to catch some of their latest like Power, Book 3, Raising Kanan, and Tyler Perry's Ruthless. Tune into Prime Video's Culture Rated collection at amazon.com/culture-rated-PV, where Black is the main character.
Hi, listeners. Welcome back. I'm Nedra Glover Tawwab, and you need to hear this. This week, we have an exciting guest, Dr. Jud Brewer, the author of Unwinding Anxiety. I read this book maybe about 2 years ago, and it was so helpful. Anxiety is one of those things that so many of us deal with, and sometimes we don't even know it. We have physical symptoms, emotional symptoms, and sometimes it really does impact our relationships with others. Dr. Brewer's take on anxiety, I think, is fresh. He talks about habits that we have around anxiety and ways that we can live with anxiety. And I am saying live with because it doesn't go away. You know, a little bit of anxiety is okay, but we don't want debilitating anxiety. So let's listen to this interview with Dr. Jud. So we are talking to an anxiety expert about a topic that I think most of us deal with. And the strategies that I found to be so helpful in Dr. Brewer's book, Unwinding Anxiety, it was so helpful because I think so many of the things that we struggle with is figuring out how to move through anxiety, how to get over it instead of how to move with it, how to think differently about it. And I'm going to stop talking because I think he has so much to share on the topic. Welcome.
Well, thanks for having me.
Of course, of course. How did you shift into the work of focusing on anxiety?
Well, as a psychiatrist, I was kind of brainwashed in medical school to prescribe medications. And, I say that tongue in cheek, but it turns out that it's about 1 in 5 patients that shows a significant reduction in symptoms when they're given the best medications out there. And so, I started getting anxious about what I could do to treat my patients, because imagine my practice has been set up around these very short visits to, where they can maximize their billing. and so it's like, I've got this, I've got 20 minutes with a patient and, it's like, I can try medication. I don't know of the next 5 patients that come in, which one of them might show a response and then what to do with the other 4. So I get anxious about treating my own patients with anxiety. On top of that, I've had some good run-ins with anxiety myself. Was so anxious at the end of college before starting medical school that I developed irritable bowel syndrome. And when I went to see the student health doc, he's like, "Do you think you could be stressed or anxious?" So I'm like, no, I must have a, Giardia bacterial infection because I go backpacking. And, because I was thinking, how could, I'm a vegetarian, I play the violin, I exercise, I do all these things. therefore I shouldn't be anxious, right? And in fact, I had pretty high anxiety to the point where my body was saying, hey, I've got to make you pay attention somehow. And I'll spare you the gory details of my guts, spilling to me that I was anxious, but even would get panic attacks during residency. So from my own experience, seeing that anxiety is really tough, to my experience of trying to help my patients with anxiety, I had to find a different way.
It's interesting because many folks don't recognize the physical impact of anxiety, like you mentioned, just stomach issues, eating issues. I don't want to say 100%, a huge proportion of people with sleep issues. Oh my gosh.
Yes.
Skin issues. I've seen people with psoriasis and eczema flare-ups and rashes and neck pain. That's one thing that I noticed with myself a few months ago. I was having an issue with my neck, went to a chiropractor, putting, cold pads on it. And I'm like, I need a new pillow. That was my frustrated voice, but I needed a new pillow, right? So I'm looking up, what is the cause of this neck pain? It said like 90% stress. I said, it can't be true. So I don't need a new pillow. I don't need to go to a chiropractor. I don't need an ice pack. I need to reduce my stress. Wow. How phenomenal. I mean, just these physical symptoms that we have that we often ignore because we get used to popping a pill, taking a Tylenol, or, eating small meals because if we eat too big, our stomach will be messed up, and it's really anxiety.
Yeah, so true. So true. This is how divorced we are from our bodies, right? And how little we listen to them and think, oh, it must be something physical. It couldn't possibly be anything else, like my mind.
Yeah. I know when, I'm working with folks and I'm seeing some boundary issues and some relational anxiety, I will just point out how leading up to, this event with them, you haven't been sleeping well. You've had more panic attacks. Could it be the relationship? It's like, maybe you're allergic to your sister. maybe that's the cause of all this anxiety. And, it's not always like in the relationship or get away from this person. It could be, maybe there's something you need to say when they tease you, or maybe there's, a no that needs to be said, or something that needs to happen. So you're not in this situation feeling terrible all the time.
Right. And then associating, oh, I get this rash every time my sister visits. What's going on? It's probably not the detergent she uses to wash her clothes.
So what are some strategies you typically suggest for managing like generalized anxiety or just some routine anxiety people may have?
Well, I would say that as a neuroscientist, outside of my clinical practice, I look at the scientific literature, and it turns out that back in the 1980s, you're probably familiar with the name Thomas Borkovec, who was very well known for talking about approaching worry and anxiety in a different way. And I never learned this in medical school, but he actually suggested way back then that anxiety could be driven through negative reinforcement. And when I found that, I was blown away because my lab had been studying how to help people break bad habits for probably a decade. We'd done good work. Like we'd gotten 5 times the quit rates of gold standard treatment for smoking, for example, and it had developed an eating program where we had gotten a 40% reduction in craving related eating. But I never thought that anxiety could actually be driven like a habit. So that's the first place that I start, is just helping people understand, how anxiety can be driven like a habit. Just to be clear, it's not that we can get rid of anxiety, by approaching it this way, but it's the critical piece here is that anxiety actually triggers a behavior. And, certainly it can be, we could be stress eating, whatever, but the behavior that's most common is worrying. And when I saw that connection, when I read about that connection, and then could start to see it in all of my patients, right? Because worry is such a cardinal piece of anxiety. the way that works is that worry makes people feel like they're in control, even though it doesn't actually fix anything because they're afraid of the future. That's how I think of anxiety. But it gives them enough of a reward in their brain that they feel like they're in control, or at least doing something. And that is enough of a reward to feed back and drive anxiety like a habit. And just to make this really clear, any habit needs 3 critical elements. 1 is a trigger, 2 is a behavior, 1's a result or a reward. And so we can think of the feeling of anxiety triggering the mental behavior of worrying, which then results in feeling like we're in control, or at least we're doing something. And then that sets up the habit loop of anxiety triggering worrying, which then just feeds back and triggers more anxiety.
Yeah, I've heard people say that they feel really guilty for not thinking about a problem. Like the old advice of just try not to think about it. Like, I have to think about it. I have to spend time on this, because if I'm not thinking about it, then I'm not doing anything. And it's like, well, you're not actually doing anything by thinking about it, but you're very distracted from watching this movie. So it's not like, that is productive work. And I think sometimes we think worrying is productive work. It is a way to show that we care about this thing that we can't control. And, I truly believe when I've had issues with anxiety, or when I've seen folks challenged by anxiety, that there are some loops we cannot get out of. And that conversation, it will just keep circling until we do something different, or until it has reached its expiration in our brain.
Yeah. Let's double click on that for a moment, just to make sure folks understand how important that point is that you're making. This worrying, I think of this as an evolutionary bottleneck where planning and thinking, right? If we need to think through a problem, that's really helpful from a survival standpoint. Planning about the future is very different than worrying about the future. And as you said, when we get stuck in that perseveration, when we're just worrying and thinking about something over and over and over, that thinking is not actually problem solving. It's just getting us stuck in that rut of more worrying. So I'm glad you highlight that, because that is a critical distinction, because people think, oh, there must be something helpful about this, but they're not actually looking at what they're getting from it. It's not helping. It's not helping them solve a problem. It's not keeping their family members safe if they're worried about that or whatnot. It's just making them more anxious in the moment.
With an hour before boarding, there's only one place to go, the Chase Sapphire Lounge by the club. There, you can recharge before the big adventure, or enjoy a locally inspired dish. You could recline in a comfy chair to catch up on your favorite show, or order a craft cocktail at the bar. Whatever you're in the mood for, find the detail that moves you with curated touches at the Chase Sapphire Lounge by the club. Chase, make more of what's yours. Learn more at chase.com/Sapphire Reserve.
Cards issued by J.P. Morgan Chase Bank, N.A. member FDIC. Subject to credit approval.
Spectrum One is a big deal. You get Spectrum Internet with the most reliable internet speeds, free advanced Wi-Fi for enhanced security and privacy, and a free Spectrum Mobile Unlimited line with nationwide 5G included, all while saving big. For the big speed, big reliability, and big savings you want, get Spectrum One. Just $49.99 a month for 12 months. Visit spectrum.com/big deal for full details. Offer subject to change. Valid for qualified residential customers only. Service not available in all areas. Restrictions apply.
This Black History Month, tap into Prime Video. They have their culture-rated collection where you can find the yesterday, today, and tomorrow of Black entertainment. Following up on Swarm that had Black Twitter buzzing last year, Donald Glover is back with a new series, Mr. and Mrs. Smith, co-created by Francesca Sloan. You know what's also new? Have you ever imagined Snoop Dogg as your Pee Wee football coach? Well, you don't have to imagine anymore. Catch him starring in the new comedy, The Underdogs, with Tika Sumter and Mike Epps. They also also have the stories of those making sports history. Hear the untold story of Barry Sanders and Bye Bye Barry, and get a behind-the-scene look at the Greek Freak in Prime Video's new documentary, Giannis. And while you're at it, go ahead and add your favorite channels like Stars and BET Plus to catch some of their latest like Power Book 3, Raising Kanan, and Tyler Perry's Ruthless. Tune in to Prime Video's Culture Rated collection this February at Amazon.com/culture-rated-PV, where black is the main character.
I want to talk for a minute about sleep issues. I have a practice here in Charlotte, and years ago, I started getting all these referrals from a medical doctor who really believed in CBT for sleep. And he would have all these patients and they would do these sleep studies. And he's like, it's nothing wrong with you. You should be able to sleep. This must be anxiety. And, we'd meet a few times and they practice some things and be able to sleep maybe a little bit better. And then, the challenge sometimes with therapy is a lot of the things that a therapist, a psychiatrist might suggest, you have to practice those things. And so if you want the anxiety to go away by doing nothing, the anxiety won't go away. And so a lot of the strategy is, okay, well, what are we doing at bedtime? So can we talk about some things that might help us sleep a little bit better?
Sure, I'd be happy to. So, for example, CBTI is a very good evidence-based treatment protocol to help people get to sleep. But it's a protocol. It says, don't do these, use your bed just for sleep and sex, for example. So don't watch television in bed, get rid of your devices, things like that at nighttime. It doesn't really touch enough on one of the core problems that I see, and it sounds like you see as well, which is the worrying piece. Because we can't just shut off the worry switch, like we can shut off our phone or our tablet or whatever. And in fact, it's so common that the NIH has specific measures in their battery of measures that relate worry and sleep. That's how common it is. So a couple of years ago, we did a study with our anxiety program and just asked a simple question, which is, hey, if we treat people's anxiety and we don't touch on any of these other things, we don't even mention the word sleep, can we improve their sleep? And lo and behold, we got a very significant reduction in anxiety, which we had seen in previous studies. But also we found that their sleep was improved simply by treating the worry piece. And the way I think of this, and I see this all the time, is, somebody's head hits the pillow and their brain says, my turn, and it just starts worrying about everything. It's like, I didn't have time during the day, but now, I've got a captive audience. Yes, my turn. And so it does that. And then anxiety it revs us up, right? Because it's fear. Fear is supposed to get us into action. So it increases our our arousal levels. So we can't sleep. And then we look at our phone or our clock and see that we're not sleeping and we get even more anxious.
Nothing ruins your sleep more than tracking how much you haven't slept.
For sure.
That is the worst. That's worse than using the phone in bed, in my opinion.
Yeah.
If you track, oh my gosh, I've been laying here 3 hours and I have 2 hours. That is the worst thing. It's like, even once you fall asleep, that thought is still in your head, and that is impacting the quality that you get in maybe the hour or 2 or 6. But, I also find that there are times where people are sleeping more than they think. And there's a lot of sleep misinformation around, like, you must sleep 8 hours. It has to be from this time to this time. And I think most people can benefit from sleeping through the night. And then there are some people. I have a cousin, and from the time she was an infant, she did not sleep at night. You're thinking, oh, typical baby stuff. Well, fast forward. She just does not sleep well at night. Now, when she was younger in school, there was a pill she would have to take to be able to go to bed because she has to function in a world that's not set up for her particular sleep cycle, right?
Yeah.
But now she has the opportunity. You would be a wonderful person to work the midnight shift, right? Like you don't adhere to, regular sleep schedules. Now, that's not common, but she sleeps the appropriate time, but during the day.
Mm-hmm.
So sometimes it's important to think about, like, how much you're sleeping overall, not just that nighttime sleep. You mentioned gastrointestinal issues, and I'd love for us to talk a minute about what we do with our eating when we're stressed, like stress eating and
Mm-hmm.
poor appetite. I tend to be more of a poor appetite person. If something is
Mm-hmm.
going on, oh my gosh, I could just drink tea and water and completely forget. And then there are some of us where it's like, I just want to feel. And that is a way for me to feel. So can you talk about stress eating?
I'd be happy to. In fact, you're highlighting something that's really interesting. I just wrote about it in my new book, The Hunger Habit, where the term anorexia, when you don't add the nervosa to it, anorexia is actually a physiologically adaptive mechanism. And what it means is that we lose our appetite when we need to lose it. So if we're afraid, right? And that's what, I think of anxiety as fear of the future. So when fear kicks in, the normal response is for our body to say, hey, I've only got this amount of blood. I need to either, devote it to my digestive system or my muscles. And when we need to be prepared to run, that's the fight, flight, freeze, then we divert all that energy to our muscles. And so our stomach says, hey, I can't digest anything right now. So don't try putting something in here. Some people even describe that as fight, flight, freeze, and fast as a reminder that our stomachs are not at their optimal when we are in danger, right? And they shouldn't be. It's a physiologically adaptive mechanism. So when we look at that term, what you're describing is the normal thing that most of us, I should say should, but like you're highlighting, there's a lot of variability in people, but that's the normal response. What gets fascinating, this is why I wrote an entire book, because it just becomes so interesting how different people learn to associate eating with different things. And, one is food mood, right? Where when we're anxious, we learn to eat or stress eat or get some comfort food so that we can comfort ourselves. And this is our evolutionarily adaptive learning mechanism, negative reinforcement that's saying, hey, something's unpleasant, make it go away. And so when we're stressed out, we learn, oh, if I eat this type of food, especially, refined carbohydrates, right? That's why comfort food is not broccoli. It's like, mac and cheese or something, something like that, something with a lot of carbohydrate in it. We eat that because our body is tuned to say, hey, this is a good source of calories. And we interpret that as, hey, this is comfortable. And so we learn to eat, not when we're hungry, but when we're stressed, we're bored, we're angry, we're lonely, we're tired, all of these things. And in fact, this is so common that scientists had to come up with a term called hedonic hunger, which is a misnomer because we're eating in the absence of hunger. But that hedonic aspect is highlighting that we're eating in the presence of emotions. And it's that emotional eating that drives us to eat. And then we learn to eat not when we're hungry, but because of an emotion. It's fascinating.
There are so many movies that when a woman breaks up, she grabs ice cream. Like that is, I can't even think of one movie because I think of so many where it's like, get the Ben and Jerry's. Where's the spoon? Yeah. Where's the meme for this? Like, have you seen this, Dr. Brewer, where it's like this, when you're sad, do this sort of conditioning. It is ice cream, or, for some of us, I've heard people say like, I've worked so hard this week. I'm so tired. I've just got to get a piece of this thing. Because it is like, this is my reward for being tired. This is the comfort I need to feel better after this breakup. Like this ice cream will make me feel so much better. Is it true in some way that is it some length of satisfaction that happens once you get that ice cream?
Well, there is a length of satisfaction, and it's a very short length.
Okay, right? How long? Like 20 minutes?
I would say, I'm just trying to think, because I asked this question of my patients as well. I would say between 5 and 20 minutes. Some of them say it's very short, So afterwards and during, they're often not paying attention to what it actually feels like. It's just the get it in so that I can distract myself. And so the satisfaction often comes from that distraction, right? Certainly ice cream tastes good, but it's really about getting something in to distract ourselves. I'm thinking of one of my patients who used to have binge eating disorder, and she would, as she described it, she would eat to numb herself from her negative emotions. And her particular food was pizza. She would eat entire large pizzas actually in one sitting as a way to numb herself.
Was that New York style or deep dish?
It was New York
that
style.
matters.
Yeah, deep dish. Boy, anybody that could shovel down an entire deep dish pizza, let me see you do it. Wow, that would be tough.
Yeah.
What's your go-to drink before a flight? A West Coast IPA or Manhattan? Find the detail that moves you with local beer and craft cocktails at the Chase Sapphire Lounge by the Club. Learn more at chase.com/Sapphire Reserve.
Cards issued by JP Morgan Chase Bank, N.A. member FDIC. Subject to credit approval.
Spectrum Mobile brings you our best deal to start the new year. Now you can get unlimited mobile for $15 per line when you get 2 lines. Spectrum Mobile includes nationwide 5G and the fastest wireless speeds with unlimited talk, text, and data. Switch to Spectrum Mobile Unlimited for just $15 per line for 12 months when you get 2 lines with no added taxes or hidden fees and no contracts. Start saving on your mobile bill now. Go to SpectrumMobile.com or visit a Spectrum store near you. Offer subject to change. Valid for new and qualified customers. Service not available in all areas. Per line activation fee, Spectrum Internet, and auto pay required. Restrictions apply.
This Black History Month, tap into Prime Video. They have their culture-rated collection where you can find the yesterday, today, and tomorrow of Black entertainment. Following up on Swarm that had Black Twitter buzzing last year, Donald Glover is back with a new series, Mr. and Mrs. Smith, co-created by Francesca Sloan. You know what's also new? Have you ever imagined Snoop Dogg as your Pee Wee football coach? Well, now you don't have to imagine anymore. Catch him starring in the new comedy, The Underdogs, with Tika Sumpter and Mike Epps. They also have the stories of those making sports history. Hear the untold story of Barry Sanders in Bye Bye Barry, and get a behind-the-scenes look at the Greek freak in Prime Video's new documentary, Giannis. And while you're at it, go ahead and add some of your favorite channels like Starz and BET Plus to catch some of their latest, like Power, Book 3, Raising Cannon, and Tyler Perry's Ruthless. Tune in to Prime Video's culture-rated collection this February at amazon.com/culture-rated-PV, where Black is the main character.
But yes, food is one of the ways that we sometimes manage anxiety. Let's talk about scrolling. And I'm not just talking about social media. I'm trying to unscroll myself because I find that my scrolling is not always social media. It's other little busy things on my phone. It's like checking the weather. Well, I wonder what the weather is like in Miami. If it's this weather in Charlotte, oh my gosh, what hotels in Miami it's just like, it's just like a thing to pass time. And I wonder how that ties into the things that we do when we become anxious or when we're feeling a thing.
Yeah. So it sounds like you're all scrolled up. Is that what you're saying?
Oh, yeah. I've reached the end of the internet. I know things about celebrities I shouldn't even know. I'm like, right. John Travolta did what? Yeah. I don't need to know these things. Yeah. I've reached the end of my limit to the point where I am in a space of really reducing. I did remove like Instagram from my phone, and I'm trying to mindfully watch TV, especially, the shows that I really enjoy and I want to pay attention to. Mm-hmm. And when I find myself like veering toward grabbing my phone, I do wonder like, why? Yeah. Like you're busy, like you're doing something. Why are you doing this other thing? And it comes back to, I'm missing out. There's something on there that like somebody, so it's a little bit of worry in there, right? Like something happened in your email. Get it. It's like, oh my gosh. Yes. I missed the email from World Market.
Right. And that's a very important one to actually
Yes.
open within 2 minutes of receiving it, because otherwise something terrible might happen. Yeah.
You can't go to the store in 2 days if you don't see it immediately.
So you're highlighting a couple of things. One is that our brains are set up to really crave information. And it's been shown that dopamine fires in our stomach when our stomachs are empty. It says, go get food. And when we don't have information about something, we get a similar mechanism firing in our brain. So I think of information is like, is the food for our brain, right? And it's been shown that animals will forego food for information because it's helpful to survive. So we get that piece. And then the internet, of course, has endless information that we could get that we don't necessarily need, but there's that little tidbit of, a little bit more could be helpful. On top of that, there's, as you mentioned, the fear of missing out, right? So it's like, what if I miss something? And occasionally we'll get some tidbit of information. We're like, wow, that was really helpful, really timely, or whatever. But that actually gets reinforced through a process called intermittent reinforcement, which is basically like a slot machine, right? You don't know when you're going to get that useful piece of information. And because you don't know when, we keep going back for more and like, let me check. I see this all the time with news feeds, right? We check our news feed because we think, I need to be up to date. How often do we really need to be up to date? If something is terrible is actually going to happen, somebody's probably going to call us. We don't need to be checking our news feed every 10 minutes. But if we check it every 10 minutes, maybe once a day, I don't know, depends on what people count as useful information, we might get some big headline update. And we're like, oh, wow. And this dopamine fires in our brain that says, that was important information. And we think, I should be checking my news feed all the time. The truth is, we could probably check it once a day, and our life isn't going to be materially different, except that we'll be happier and be spending our time on more productive things than checking our news. But I think that's an example of how we scroll in so many different ways. They all fall into that general theme.
Yeah, I think when we use the word scroll, people often think like, you're looking at TikTok, you're looking at Instagram, but it's like weather apps, it's news, it's shopping sites, it's refreshing those emails, it's, looking at your Ring doorbell too many times. It's all the things that, we don't have to do in that moment and that we're not doing intentionally, because it's okay to intentionally scroll, right? But what if we're supposed to be working and we're scrolling, so there are some, parameters needed.
Yeah. And I think this is where we can even leverage the strength of our brain, because often we think, the easiest thing to do is just to remove this from my phone or not do it. The problem is that willpower is more myth than muscle. And so, I love the phrase, what we resist persists. So if we think, I'm not going to do that, that's just going to build up like a water behind a dam until we eventually, succumb to whatever the behavior is. And on top of that, when we are deprived of something, we want it more. So if we say, I'm not going to eat the cookie, then we suddenly want the cookie even more, even if we didn't want it that much, because we told ourselves we can't have it. So here, knowing how our brain works is really, really helpful. And whether it's resisting or moving beyond the resisting of the food or trying to stop ourselves from worrying, it's the same mechanism in our brain. And so what we found is that instead, this might sound crazy, but what we found is that having people go ahead and do the thing, but pay attention to the result of the thing, really helps them become disenchanted with it so that they can naturally be less excited to do it in the future. And that's where real behavior change happens. So for example, one study, we got a 67% reduction in anxiety, not by telling people to develop more willpower, but by having them explore what they actually get from worrying, right? And they start to see, worrying doesn't actually solve problems. It doesn't help anything. It just makes me more anxious. And, we did a study with our Eat Right Now program that's around helping people change their relationship to eating, we got a 40% reduction in craving related eating, not because we told people to, resist the cravings, but because we had people go ahead and eat. And if they overate or they were eating junk food or whatever, we had them pay attention to the results. Are you ready for this? It only took 10 to 15 times of somebody overeating for that reward value to drop below zero and for them to change that behavior. So it doesn't take a lot of time. It just takes knowing how our brain works, and it takes fostering that awareness so that we can ask these simple questions like, what am I getting from this? And then we can leverage the strength of our brain.
Yeah, I have a following of significance on Instagram, and I was very hesitant to remove the app because I'm with you. I don't think the app is not the problem. I am the problem. And so I use it from my iPad, and I can use it as much as I want to. However, my iPad is huge. It's just not as comfortable to use Instagram on my iPad, and I'm not taking it everywhere with me. And the thing I wanted to cure more than anything was looking at things when I'd rather be reading. And so that's why I removed it from my phone, because I would find myself like scrolling when I could actually just open my Kindle app. So I'm like, I want to read more books. I don't want to read captions. And so when I want to read captions, I go to my iPad and I look and I read all the captions I want to, but I don't have it on my phone. And I don't know if, that's useful to anyone, but it helped me separate work from pleasure. Right? Like, because a part of Instagram is work. And then the other part, when I'm looking at plants, is like, okay, this is the fun side. But, I can schedule 20 minutes to do the work on Instagram. But if that thing is on my phone, the lines are just blurred.
Well, let me ask you, when if you reflect back on reading more and scrolling less, how does that feel?
It feels really good because I like to get lost in a book. I feel like I'm getting more. The scrolling sometimes, I feel like I'm looking at a lot of things that are not my business, and I would be better off not knowing. So I don't need to know this information. And I find myself really irritated sometimes with the information I find out. And then I have to tell myself, that's not my business anyway. And I am the person going on here and looking at these things. And then I'm like, well, why would they? Don't look at it. They could do whatever they want to do. You don't have to look at it. And I think that's, it's anything. I think that, when you're looking at the lives of others and people doing things, it's like, well, I want to do some stuff too. And it's not always helpful for me to watch people do stuff and not do the stuff. So I think it gives me more freedom to live in my life and be less of a viewer of others.
Yeah.
And I wasn't using it that much as the interesting thing. People laughed. They're like, how much was you use? Too much. 2 minutes, too much. Too much for me. For me.
Right. Well, and asking this question, how do I want to live my life? And probably nobody's going to have on their gravestone, I wish I'd scrolled more.
And I really like getting information from people. I find that my clients, my friends, my family, when they tell me about the news story, or they tell me about this new trend, or they directly text me a meme, a video, I am able to connect with them around that thing versus it just being in this space. So I like the one-on-one connection that I can have with people without me finding this stuff and telling them. It's really fun for a client to be like, did you go to the grocery store yet? I'm like, no, what's happening? It's going to be a storm. Really? And so we get to, I had no idea, so it's a really interesting way for me to receive information. I like it that way.
I love that. Yeah. Yeah. And we certainly don't have Well, I'll put it this way. We could certainly all benefit from more connection in this very disconnected world. So I love that way of connecting with people. Yeah.
Yes. So please list your books and tell folks where they can find you.
Sure. So my website's just drjud.com, drjud.com. I'm also on Instagram at dr.jud. And then the newest book's called The Hunger Habit. And the book that we've probably most been talking about today is called Unwinding Anxiety. And the app that we've studied is of the same name, and people can find those, anywhere they like to buy books. I'd say support your independent booksellers, but you can also find links to a bunch of different places. Folks can find them on my drjud.com website.
Yes. Well, thank you so much. We are in the family of publishing. You're on Avery, I'm on Tarcher. So I deeply appreciate your work. I can't wait for your next book. The work you're doing is incredible, valuable, and important. So thank you so much.
Well, thank you. It's been a pleasure.
You Need to Hear This is an iHeart production hosted by me, Nedra Glover Tawwab. Our executive producer is Joelle Monique. Our senior producer and editor is Mia Dawn Taylor. Send us a voice memo with your questions about boundaries and relationships at youneedtohearthis@iheartmedia.com. Please be sure to rate our show wherever you listen to it and share this episode with someone who needs to hear this. Talk to you next time.
AC Hotels by Marriott is a European-inspired hotel brand where every detail has been refined, crafted, and considered to ensure a seamless stay. Wake up to the European-inspired breakfast with hand-shaved prosciutto, freshly baked croissants, and made-to-order hot items. Unwind in the AC lounge with their custom gin tonic, served in a scientifically engineered glass. Get a restful night's sleep with a relaxing lavender turn-down ritual. Visit ac-hotels.com and learn more about the perfectly precise hotel. AC Hotels is part of the Marriott Bonvoy portfolio of hotels.
Introducing Uber Teen Accounts, an Uber account for your teen with always-on enhanced safety features. Your teen can request a ride when you can't take them. You'll get real-time notifications along the way. Your teen can feel a sense of independence. You can follow their entire route on a live tracking map. Your teen will get assigned the top-rated drivers.
Thank you.
You will get peace of mind. Add your teen to your Uber account today. Available in select locations. See app for details.
You deserve to treat yourself, so turn your tax refund into a U fund and give yourself a Straight Talk Wireless Extended Silver Unlimited plan and get a new Samsung Galaxy A14 on them. You can get a great everyday value on wireless with Straight Talk's Unlimited plan starting at $25 a line per month for 4 lines. You'll save so much you'll be enjoying that refund all year long. It's the refund that keeps on refunding. Find Straight Talk at straighttalk.com or at your local Walmart store.
Taxes and fees not included. Offer valid through 4/14/24 while supplies last. Online only. Must purchase a Straight Talk Extended Silver Unlimited plan to qualify. Limit of 5 phones per customer. Family plan discount with 4 lines, all on the Silver Unlimited plan. Not combinable with autopay discount. 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 Plan. Not combinable with autopay discount.